Thessalonians, Paul was a master of the one-liners. Over at the end of 1 Thessalonians, we find a whole lot of one-liners, and they're all good. But verse 21,
1 Thessalonians.
1 Thessalonians, 5th chapter, verse 21 says this: prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. But you don't hear too many folks talking about that you can actually prove the truth of the Bible, because we've talked so often about faith as being something that we decide to believe, but there's no such thing, folks, as biblical faith that without evidence. But
1 Thessalonians 5th chapter and 21st verse.
But I'm fixing to move along. I'm fixing to move along though. It says, "Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good." And I told you that story that time. I just wrote that scripture on Facebook, and some lady came back and said, "You can't do that. How you gonna prove anything?" Hey, folks, we'd have no right to believe what the Bible said if there was not some evidence. Like I said, so many folks believe that they call faith that which we just decide to believe, but no, faith itself. The faith chapter over Hebrews 11, it starts off, says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen." And that word substance of things hoped for, that word substance is confidence of things hoped for and the proof of things not seen. We sometimes get to thinking, if I don't see it with my eyes, you can't prove it. But the eye, it actually is one of the most deceptive of all our senses. There you go. That's easy for you to say. I lost the word, senses. We often, he's talking about just don't be out there doing stuff that even looks like you're leaving the faith. If it's not, even if it's not evil, if somebody is looking at you doing something that is considered evil, or it looks like you may be, if they see your car parked down at the house of ill repute for 2 or 3 nights in a row. But see, our faith, folks, is not blind faith. There's evidence. That word, like I said, evidence of things not seen is the proof of things not seen. I often use, as an example, ashes. If you run across ashes, you don't have to have seen the fire, because ashes is a natural result of a fire.
That's right.
So if you've got the ashes, you know that sometime in the past there was a fire. Our God is a logical God. He's a reasonable God, and folks, these things can be proven by logic. Now, it's kind of course, no, it's not really remarkable, because the devil is on his job. But we take things like evolution and just declare them be truth with no proof at all. But yet we see how the whole creation works together in harmony, works together all the time, and they won't teach the Bible as truth, but they'll just declare evolution as truth.
Yeah.
Because we got an enemy, folks,
Yes, we do.
that wants you to believe anything outside of what the Word says. Let's look over at Romans chapter 1. We'll start at verse 18. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness." In other words, they're not going to have the truth, so they kind of cover it. They hold it in unrighteousness. They deny the truth while accepting stuff without any kind of evidence. "Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things which are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse." Said we can look at the creation and understand that there had to be a creator, folks. I mean, that's logic. You do away with logic, you ain't got much left. But anything that when it comes to pertaining to God, the devil's right there to try to take God out of it. But I heard I read an article. This guy said that he worked with a fellow one time that declared himself to be an atheist. He said, "Oh, there ain't no God. All this was just an accident." And he said he had one of his other friends that was real good in woodwork, made him a globe, and said, raised all the mountains and had everything just beautiful carved into that globe. And said he set it up on his desk and said his atheist friend came in that morning, said, wow, that's good. That's a good work. Said, who made that globe? He said, nobody made it. I just come in this morning. It was sitting on my desk. Just popped up right there. Just popped up right there. He said, you crazy. That took a lot of skill to make it. He said, you can believe it. It took skill to make this wooden globe, but you can't believe that it took somebody, with a higher power to make all this creation. But see, that shows the illogic of man.
Yes.
And God is a logical God. And order, folks, always speaks to somebody that keeps it going. When they talk about the Big Bang Theory of actions that caused all this, you have never saw an accident in your life that created something better. Accidents always create something worse. But not only was this accident created all this, but you got to believe that it just keeps it going in order, folks, all these years. Science will say, hey, we've been here all these millions and millions of years. None of them arguing how old the earth is. But just the fact that it continues to work declares, as Paul said, that there is a controller. Even the invisible things, we don't see God, but we see what he does. And we have to understand that all of this, whoever created it, and we know it's God, and the Bible proves it, and all the evidence will prove it. But whoever created it, common logic will tell you that he's got to be greater than the creator. I mean, if you see a house somebody that built a beautiful house, you got to know whoever built it was greater than the house.
Yes.
He had more knowledge than the house. So we have God who is greater than all creation, but who left his fingerprint on everything, so that if we got logic will tell us that he's there. Logic will tell us that he created and he had a plan for it. And he's got a plan for our lives, folks. Every one of us is in the plan of God. Do we have to follow his plan? No, we don't. But he's got a plan for our lives, and when we follow his plan, we find that peace, and that only the truth of him brings us, folks. We can ignore, like I said, man has a habit of ignoring the evidence. We've got a lot of folks that worships the Creator, the creation, even today. Well, we got folks, tree huggers, out that will worship a tree and deny the Creator of the tree. Hey, if it's in order, if it's order, you got to know that there is. If it operates on laws, you got to know that there is a lawgiver, higher than the law, higher than the order that's working. But again, the sun and the moon has been God to men for years and years and years. Way back in history, you find folks worshiping the sun and the moon. See, the Bible said the invisible things of him is seen in the creation, and it is, folks. Hey, we got the sun there, and people worship it because they said, hey, the sun gives life to all things. No, we have to have the sun. That's the reason the Creator put it there. But now here and science will tell you it's just a big ball of compressed gas burning, and I don't know. But I know this, if it's been burning all these millions and millions of years, somebody had to keep the fuel turned to it pretty good. You ever started a fire that just kept burning without fuel? It's been burning all these years, and it doesn't get so hot it burns us up. It doesn't get hotter or colder enough to affect anything. So somebody's got a thermostat on it. Logic will tell us, hey, somebody is controlling the heat of the sun. If it didn't, hey, folks, like I say, if you start a fire right there, if you pour more fuel on it, it's going to blaze up. If you take fuel away from it, it's going to get colder. It's going to burn lower. But there's the sun, which plainly declares that there is a Creator that's controlling it, folks. And we got a moon that moves the tides.
Yes.
But see, creation works together. And we can't get any further than our own body if we use logic before we understand that there is a Creator. We got billions of cells in our body, all of them working together. All of them with a purpose, billions. So we ain't even figured out what all of them's for yet. But start taking some of them out and see if your body operates the same. Like I told you the other day, I saw where this few years ago where this atheist came and was going to debate. I believe it was Ken Hand he was going to debate. And he was trying to tell, he was teaching evolution. And he said our tailbone used to be a tail. He said there was no purpose for our tailbone. And so Ken Hand said, well, if you don't think it's a purpose, I'll pay to have yours took out. And that ended the conversation because there is a purpose. Hey, you couldn't control your bodily functions without it because that's where all the muscles is attached. But when he said, hey, if there ain't no purpose, I'll have yours took out, that stopped the conversation. Folks, old David said that he was fearfully and wonderfully made. Yeah. And we are. When you think about the body, all its complexities that keeps us living, keeps us going, all of them working together. Why do they keep working together? Because the Creator set them to work. There's laws, folks, that operates it. And for years, the doctor does a great work but they studied the Bible, the body.
Yes.
God created it. So what we got in science and what we got in doctors is just people who study what somebody higher than them has made. And there's nothing more complex than the human body. We can't even, the eye, we can't even come close to understanding how the eye works. All these, they tell me that there's all kind of little rods and things, just thousands of them in the eye that causes us to see. And quick, I could look, and that light bounce. That light will take the eye will take in that light and tell my brain what I'm looking at, just that quick. We don't have a computer today even comes close to the human body that declares that there is a God. Let's look over at Psalms 19. Talk about the creation and how the creation itself speaks to us about the truth of God. I say people say these silly things like, if there is a God, why don't I see him? Well, that's like saying there ain't no wind because I can't see it.
Yeah.
No, you can see the results of the wind. It's the same way with God. Hey, one day I'll see him for myself. I cannot see him in the natural. He is a spirit. But one day we will see him, and we better be ready to see him when we do. And we're getting a lot closer to that day. David said this, the heavens, that's what we're talking about, the sun, the moon, all this. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. In other words, brings to light. 19:1. Day unto night utter speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. In other words, the order. The day, the night, everything is the order. Anywhere you see order, you know that it's been set to order. And see, the confusion of science will tell you, it's called the theory of entropy, I believe is what it says, where things go from, once it reaches the high point of creation, then it starts to deteriorate. Everything goes from order to disorder. You build a house and it'll start rotting. Whatever you do goes from maximum order to disorder. God, these things that God has created, folks, they tell you billions of years they've been here, still working. Still working. The earth is still here, the sun's still here, the moon's still here, the stars still here, still working. It ain't went into disorder. The disorder always happens through rebellion against God's order. But God always puts it back. But he said there's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. In other words, it's a worldwide thing. Anybody can see the order in the sun and the moon, the stars, order in what's happening around us in the creation. Their line is going out through all the earth, and their word to the end of the world. In them had he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit are the end of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat. In other words, wherever you're at, you can feel the heat of the sun. You can see and know that there is a creator that's controlling this thing. A few years ago, some scientists came out with this wild idea that the sun was burning out. Said, hey, the sun will, in a few years, the sun will burn out. Well, it ain't burned out, folks. It's still burning. And I told folks then, it'll stop burning when God says stop. It started burning when God set it in order. It'll quit when God says stop, because he is the creator and he does have control of this thing. Now, he's a lawgiver. And just like, we're getting springtime and people will be planting. Well, the seed, folks, within every seed, God has placed the ability to reproduce its parent. In every seed. And not once in history has a grain of corn produced a wheat plant. Not once in history does a tomato seed produce watermelon. It's all in everything that needs to grow what it is in that seed. And what was it we was reading today? The lotus plant? Well, that seed could last hundreds of years. And still, because God put in it the ability to do that. And see, that's in every, when we see in Genesis, they talk about how everything was after its kind, we see where God was saying, hey, it'll reproduce itself. And so creation continually reproduces itself, but it never switches and reproduces something else. No. Because there's a creator that set the laws, and within those laws, that's the only way it can work. It cannot work anything outside the laws that God has already set. It's sad, though, that we've come to the place, folks, that we actually think that you have to wait till your kid gets grown and let him tell you what they are, whether he's male or female. It's sad, folks. No, it's insanity, beyond a doubt. Yep. And man will just swallow up stuff like that. They'll just grab a hold of stuff with no evidence. I mean, where is the evidence anywhere that a man can change himself? I mean, see, biologically, it's impossible. A man can't change himself to a woman because regardless of what he does, in him is still man. That's just losers. Again, it doesn't change. That shows you he hadn't changed who he is. It hadn't changed what God has brought him forth to be. But I can't ever remember. I mean, it's beyond my intelligence or ignorance or whatever you want to call it. I can't ever remember thinking, wow, I wish I was a girl. Not once. Not once. No, that's what the liberal left is saying. He's saying you can't even say gay. No, he didn't say that. He said they couldn't teach kindergarten through third grade.
Yeah.
They didn't need any sex education out in the schools. Well, let me just say this. Gay is not what we say it is now. Gay used to be happy. Go look. Yeah, gay though, the word gay didn't used to be homosexual. It just meant you was happy, that's right. According to how you look at it. But see, we have an enemy that tries to change everything. That's the only way that he can conquer anything is change everything God said. And if we could actually get people to understand that, hey, if you are walking outside of what the Creator has set up, you're not going forward, you're backing up. But everything that God's done, the enemy tries to undo. And that's changing that gender is just one of those things that the devil is trying to undo, folks. And like I said, it's ruining women's sports.
Yeah.
Because they can't compete.
No.
Because it's bigger and stronger. It don't make no difference if he grows his hair out and takes hormones or whatever they do. They're still a man. But God made them male and female, and that's what they are, folks. That's what they are. But but if they could actually won in their own classification, they wouldn't have done that. That's just they're just losers, and it's hard to understand how in the world that we can just throw out logic out the window and embrace stuff that's just totally illogical. But that's where we've come to, because there was so much junk going on. Because DeSantis declared that second place winner the winner. The governor declared, even after they declared him the winner, DeSantis said no, she was still the best swimmer in the competition, in women's competition. But the Bible, you can look at all secular history, and secular historians will even argue with themselves. It's according to hey, we have the tendency, if we're writing something, we're going to give it that slant, that the way we feel. If you read something that the Southern historian wrote about the Civil War, it wouldn't sound the same thing as what the Northern historians wrote about the Civil War, because their emotions get in the way. And so secular historians will disagree with themselves, but even secular historians has to admit to so many of the things in the Bible, because hey, the evidence is clear. You know, we've the archaeologists has come up with all kind of writings about that secular people wrote about the Exodus from Egypt of Israel, because hey, it's the evidence was there that it happened. And I was just reading today a thing about that Grant Jeffries had written. I believe it's over in Numbers, where you remember where Israel kept complaining about out there in the wilderness about God, what he was feeding them, and he sent the quails in there, and they ate the quails. Remember that? And it said the Lord sent a plague among them and killed thousands. Well, Grant Jeffries, like I say, he was an archaeologist, and they found out there where the Bible says thousands of them died, and it's been called that ever since history began to be wrote. They found just thousands of graves right where Moses said that the plague hit and the Jews died. And from the very beginning, they called it the Jews' graveyard. Thousands of graves in one place. The Bible said that that the plague went among them and they died. And that's just like, you know, the walls of Jericho. That article, it's been several years ago, talking about they found the ruins of the walls of Jericho, and the walls had fell, like the Bible said, flat out. Didn't fall from like somebody pushed them in, fell from the inside out. And they ran tests on some of the pottery on the inside, and said that it looked like whatever happened to Jericho happened suddenly, because they found food in the pots, in the cooking pots. They found evidence that they whatever happened so suddenly that they was in there cooking, and suddenly it happened. The Bible said the walls just fell flat down, and Israel's army went in. When they dug up the evidence, there it was, just like God had inspired the writer to write. So see, God ain't hiding the truth of him. He wants man to see that he is God. And let me say this, if it's truth, whether it's the Bible or anything else, if it's truth, the evidence should back it up, shouldn't it? Right. Isn't that what truth is? That which the evidence backs up? So, folks, you don't, by looking and seeing and studying, you don't hurt who God is by trying to prove what he said, or looking to see if you can prove it. Hey, if it's truth, evidence will back it up. And it is truth, folks. The Bible is true, not because I said it's true, but because evidence backs it up. And you know, back when they came out of Egypt, Israel came out of Egypt, and they was Moses began to tell them, give them laws of hygiene and all this, was totally different from what Egypt did. And Moses began to quarantine people that had contagious diseases hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before we even discovered that there was a germ. And if anybody was around somebody that had a contagious disease, they had to wash their hands in running water. In other words, they wasn't washing off the disease back into the same water and going it over and over again. See, how did they know? Except there was a creator that understood that there was germs. And the Egyptians I was reading today, where that came up with some of these Egyptian prescriptions. You know, the Lord told Israel, he said, if you obey me, I will put none of the diseases of the Egyptians on you. Right. And they were out there in the desert 40 years, and none of the diseases was there. But he told them what to do. But I was reading some of the Egyptians' medical science, and they was taking fly dung off the wall and putting it in cuts to heal it. Yeah. And donkey manure and all this stuff. The old boy said, even to extract a splinter that was in your hand, if it was getting infected, the Egyptian cure was to rub donkey manure in it. He said, the old boy was right, and said, I guarantee you, they forgot the pain of the splinter, cause the bacteria from the donkey probably killed them in a couple of days. Yeah. You know, rubbing it in where it was already infected. But see, the difference in man and God is God knows what he's doing. And when he told Israel there how to live out there for 40 years, hey, they lived out there until they began to rebel against him and died. You know, like I said, they understood that there was a contagious diseases. But the people around them didn't understand that. Why? See, the Greeks were supposed to be the most advanced people of their time. And the Greeks was teaching, because we call it Greek mythology, but back then they believed it was true. They was teaching that there was a giant turtle up in space that had the world on its back, that just kept plodding around space. Yeah. Job came along and said he hangeth the world on nothing. And we shot a satellite up, and guess what? The world wasn't hanging on nothing. It was just stuck out there in space. Again, that's the difference in the Creator who knows what he's doing and man who's guessing. And in the Psalms 22, folks, David wrote a perfect picture of the crucifixion of Christ many hundreds of years before crucifixion was even a means of capital punishment with the Romans. But see, David wrote this. Well, let's just look at that. Psalms 22. This is the crucifixion of Jesus, hundreds of years before Christ was even born, and before 22. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Remember those words? Yes. Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and I am in the night season, and I am not silent. But thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee, they trusted, they did disbelieve them. They cried unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were not confounded. But I am a worm and no man a reproach of men and despised of the people. All that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out their lips and shake their heads, saying, He trusted on the Lord that will deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delights in him. And this was the mockery that came to Christ on the cross hundreds of years later. But thou art he that took me out of the womb, and thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast. I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls, he's talking about power, demonic powers of Bashan, have beset me. They gaped upon me with their mouth as a raven and roaring lion. I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws, and thou hast brought me into the dust of death. For dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look upon me and stare upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vestments. You see all this that we can read about in the crucifixion? Yes. David was writing it hundreds of years before it happened. Only God. Only God. Be not far from me, O Lord, my strength, haste to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorn. I will declare the name unto my brethren in the midst of the congregation when I praise thee. Ye that fear the Lord, praise him, all ye seed of Jacob. Glorify him and fear him, all ye seed of Israel. For he hath not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, neither has he hid his face from him. But when he cried unto him, he heard. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows, therefore, before them that fear him. The meek shall eat up and be satisfied. They shall praise the Lord that seek him, for your heart shall live forever. At the end of the world shall they remember, and turn unto the Lord, for all the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee. To the end of the world, he said, they're going to remember what's happening here. Folks, we still remember today. There's never been a man in any... See, the critics were talking about Jesus. They just wrote all this to fit. But let me tell you something, folks. See, you have to believe that Jesus, what he said he was, is who he was. Or you have to believe that he was the one of the most gifted, demonic even, liars, really. Trickster that ever was, because, hey, he fit all the prophecies. And let me tell you something, folks. Nobody tells a lie willingly that's going to get him killed. Now, the disciples had no reason to lie about what the things that Jesus did. They had no reason to lie about seeing him resurrected. Hey, they could have ended their persecution by saying, we made all this up. And y'all just forgive us. We made it all up. But not one of them would deny him. Not one of them denied him. They all met terrible deaths by sticking, even after he was crucified, because they saw him alive. And see, like I said, it would have helped them physically to have denied it, but they saw him alive, and so they would not deny it. And he, Jesus told them, I believe it's over in John, told the disciples after he was resurrected, he said, "Tarry ye in Jerusalem until you be endued with power from on high." Remember that?
Yeah.
So they believed him, and they believed him enough so that they all gathered in that upper room when the Holy Spirit fell. And history will tell you, I mean, they can point it right back to that after that, the church was just a handful of men and women who were scared and hiding that saw him crucified. But after that day of Pentecost, the church it exploded, with growth. So, I mean, the evidence is there that it did happen exactly like they said it was going to happen. Like Jesus said, he said, "Tarry ye here, and I'm going to send you this power from on high. I will come to you," he said. So he sent his Spirit back, and when his Spirit entered into those disciples in the upper room, they quit being afraid and hiding. They went out into the street and won thousands to the Lord. And like I say, history will show that at that time the church exploded in growth because, hey, it was true. He is risen, and he's still alive, folks. Now, again, that's evidence that shows you that the Bible, what it says, is the absolute truth. And see, Christ, when we look at Christ, they had been people before him that had claimed to be prophets, and there were people after him that claimed to be prophets, and there were even some that claimed to be Messiah, but they died and were forgotten. He died and arose, and still gaining converts. Bar Kokhba, a few years after Christ died, a Jewish guy by the name of Bar Kokhba, he came along and said Jesus was weak, that he was actually, because Jesus got himself crucified. So Bar Kokhba told them that he was the Messiah. And he won some battles against the mighty Roman army, so he had a following. Yeah. Bar Kokhba died on the 9th of Av, which was the Jewish day of mourning. Most people right now, if you said Bar Kokhba, wouldn't even know who you was talking about. But say Jesus. There's the difference. Because one was trying to make something of himself, the other was who he said he was, who came to exalt the truth in God. See, Jesus said things that no other man had said, and Jesus did things that no other man had done. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me." He declared himself to be who he was, folks. And hey, his followers still carries on that today. I saw a thing that was attributed to Napoleon. He said he didn't understand Jesus. He said, "I've got people, if I was there with them, would fight till they died for me. But this Jesus who has been gone for years, he's got people that will fight till the death for him, and he's been gone all these years." He said, "I don't understand that." People who had never saw him. I've never saw him. Have you saw him? But you know what? His promise lives in me. Amen. So I know he was who he said he was. So, and the Bible, like I said, the Bible is a book of truth, and the evidence will bear it out. And there's so many things that archaeologists have dug up that proves what the Bible said. And I saw a thing today. I read an article today. It was talking about so much that was attributed to Egypt was actually did by the captured Jews. And it's always been my theory that the Jews built the pyramids. Yeah. Because they were God's people, and they had the laws, and they understood things that no other people understood. And still, folks, today, the Jewish nation, they like one fourth of 1% of the world's population is Jewish, but they hold a quarter, I believe it is, of all the Nobel Peace Prizes. Yeah. Because they have accomplished so much. It's because God gave them knowledge through his laws that no other nation had. And folks, we are grafted into those promises, and God will give us what we need if we learn to listen. But we've been brought up not to listen. I mean, not in churches, but we've been brought up. And you know, I was talking to Alice today. We allow our kids to be brainwashed in our schools, and Christians will support stuff that is totally against Christianity. I mean, we got Disney now that's fixing to. It's always been a child's thing, you know. You go down to Disney World and little kids love it. And I saw today on the news where the head of Disney now said they're changing everything where at least a third of their heroes was going to be homosexuals. Yeah. They was going to turn them all into homosexuals. Hey, folks, when it gets to where you want to turn cartoon characters into homosexuality, you got a problem. You got a problem. But Christians support that. They go right down there and keep them moving. We do that, folks. We do it, and that's not really logical, but we do that. We ought to be supporting those that supporting the truth, because Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And the reason that so many people is bound is because we forgot the truth. And the reason you see all this happening in the world, it's not because of the truth. It's because we rejected the truth and accepted the lie. But let's don't be part of the problem. If it's rejecting the things of Christ, hey, there's Christian businesses out there that we can uphold. Let's go to them. Let's uphold them. Let's be a part of his plan instead of part of the enemy's plan. You know, that's Dick's Sporting Goods is another one. A few years ago, they had holiday trees. Nate, that's back when Nate was alive, and Nate said he asked the little manager or whoever it was in there at that time, you know, don't you think that might cause the Christians not to participate, you know, not to buy stuff from you? He said, I don't care, there ain't enough of them even matter. And you know what? He was right. He was right. Because Christians just overlook all those things and go right on and support those that is totally against Christ. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I am ready to stand for what God said, because, hey, the truth is here. This should be our battle cry right here. If the Bible doesn't back it up, we shouldn't just run into it. But see, that's another one of those things you talk about the propaganda and the spin. This guy never said anything against gay. He stood up for what the Bible said. One of the founders, the left was boycotting Chick-fil-A, and me and Alice went up there one of those times when they were telling everybody, don't go to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
and it took 15 minutes to get up there to push your order in, because Christians stood up, and hey, Chick-fil-A kept growing. That shows you what we could do if we walked in what God said. What would happen, though? What would happen if everybody who is Christian would vote Christian principle?
That's right.
We could elect anybody that in any elected office, but Christians will vote for folks totally against the Christian principle. And I'll agree that nowadays you'd have to look long and hard to find somebody that would stand for a Christian principle. But the reason they don't is because they know that they can get the Christian vote without standing for the Christian principle. You're not going to get the gay vote without standing for the gay principle. And see that they'll say, "Oh, we just want to be left alone," and they'll turn around and talk about the gay agenda. What is the gay agenda? That is they're trying in your schools and everywhere else, folks, to gain the minds of the kids. See, that's an agenda. And I know, folks, we shouldn't just hang up on one thing, but hey, we shouldn't say that wrong is right either. No. I never had that problem. Back when I was out there wild and crazy, of course, I never understood the gay thing to start with. But when I was out there wild and crazy, I never tried to get folks to believe that what I was doing was right, because I knew it was wrong. See? But now, folks, they got there doing stuff, and hey, you're wrong if you say that's not right. And everybody comes down on you, and they've silenced the ones that should be speaking the loudest.
Yeah.
I don't have to judge. The Bible already has, folks. But we need to get back, as not just here, but worldwide. Those who call themselves by the name of the Lord needs to get back in this book and stand for what it says. Stand on what it says and not be moved. When we look at the early church, those folks was willing to die because of what they knew. See, so often we just get tied up on what we've been told, and we never really know it in our hearts and our minds. We never really get to the point where, okay, that's it. That's just where I'm standing. We call ourselves by doctrinal names, you know. I'm of the Baptist faith. I'm of the holiness faith. No, let's be of Jesus faith. Let's believe what he said. I don't care what church you're going to. Let's just believe what he said. And if we start doing that, folks, I guarantee you we'll see a difference in our community and in our nation. Like I said, we got enough people who claim to be Christians. If we voted Christian principle, could elect any official. If it was a fair election, I'm not sure if we're gonna get any more of them. We are where we at because we left the principle of God, because we started teaching this as a religion instead of as a truth. But this is truth, and it can be proven over and over, and has been. You know, there's been, through history, people would rise up and try to destroy it. Well, make it illegal to own a Bible, burn the Bibles, make it illegal to be a Christian. But it stands, and it stands because it is true. And that's another thing, folks, to show you how powerful the enemy is. You don't hear anybody talking about banning the Quran. No. Have you ever heard anybody talk about let's ban the Quran? But they've been talking for years about labeling the Bible as hate speech because it wouldn't go along with what the world was going along with. But hey, if there's ever been hate speech, you can find it in the Quran. But nobody says anything about that. Jesus is coming. The Bible said that he would be born of a virgin. And he was. Said that he would, told what he'd teach, and he did. Told that he'd be crucified, he was. Said that he would rise again the third day, he was. He said he was returning, folks. You can bet he will. He will. Just exactly. Just like he said he would do. Folks, we can trust what he said. Folks, this thing is winding down on us, and we need to get the work done.